You know those moments when silence just feels safer, right? When a relationship gets tense or you just feel completely exhausted from trying to explain yourself again, the urge isn't always to fight back. Sometimes it's just to withdraw, to go silent.
It's that feeling, deep down, that pulling back is the only way you can really protect yourself. When you feel misunderstood or under pressure, retreating can seem like the smartest move you can make. But what if there's another way to find that safety? A way to find rest without having to retreat completely?
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with that temptation to go silent. Then we'll talk about what it looks like to build a real foundation for your soul. We'll be honest about the pressure we feel, look at the choice to trust, figure out where real safety is, and then see how all of this leads to some incredible freedom. So let's really dig into that feeling first. That gut instinct to just pull away when we're facing misunderstanding or pressure from other people. I mean, it feels like the easier path, doesn't it? The safer one? But is that retreat really where we find true, lasting stability?
You know, Psalm 62 is an amazing guide for this. And what's so interesting is that the writer, David, isn't talking about a physical battle here. There are no swords or shields. He's dealing with people, with words, with shaky relationships. This is all about how to steady your heart when it feels like everything and everyone is trying to knock you off your feet. So how do we find that stability when everything feels so shaky? Well, the first step isn't trying to fix our feelings. It's about grounding our minds in what is actually true, no matter how chaotic the storm around us seems. Let's look really close at that phrase, waits in silence. This is not the silence of fear or just giving up. It's a settled quietness. It's a kind of stillness that only comes from a really deep confidence, from knowing exactly where your help is coming from.
When you read these words, they paint this powerful picture, right? Think of a massive mountain. A storm can be raging all around it, the winds can be howling, but the mountain itself, its core, its foundation, it doesn't move. That's the picture we're getting here. Our confidence isn't in our circumstances being calm, but in a God who is rock solid. Now, being anchored in truth doesn't mean we just ignore our emotions. Not at all. It's so important to be honest about what our heart is actually feeling when we're in the middle of that storm. And these feelings are totally real. That pressure can make you feel unsafe, overwhelmed, and just completely unsure if saying anything will even help or if it will just make everything worse. The psalmist gets that. It acknowledges the pain. It reminds us that, yeah, the wind might be strong, but it doesn't have the power to uproot us from our foundation.
And this brings us to a major turning point, from what we feel to what we choose. See, this is where a conscious decision has to be made. The writer of the psalm doesn't just sit around and wait for his feelings to calm down. No, he actively speaks to his own soul and tells it to trust.
I want you to pay close attention to that word glory. In the original language, it has this idea of weight, like our significance, our value, our worth. And this shows us something profound. We were not designed to carry the weight of protecting our own worth. It's too heavy. When we try, we get unstable. So David is basically declaring, my value isn't something I have to defend. God's got it. He's carrying it for me.
This just makes it so clear that waiting in silence before God is not about stuffing our emotions down. It's actually the complete opposite. It's an invitation to pour out our hearts to Him. Think of it like a dam. If all that pressure builds up with no release, it's eventually going to break and cause a ton of damage. It's the same with us. That unexpressed fear and hurt can leak out as bitterness or just pulling away. God gives us a safe place for that release.
Okay, so if God is the one true refuge, well, that means we often run to false ones, right? Let's take a look at some of the common things we lean on for security, things that just can't hold us up when it really counts.
And this lays out the contrast so clearly. We do this all the time, don't we? We lean on getting other people's approval, or we try to control the situation, or we demand things turn out a certain way. But all of that is like building on sand. It might look solid for a little while, but under real pressure, it just shifts and crumbles. God alone is the stone, the solid, immovable foundation.
So what this means for you is that with God, you get both. You get strength and tenderness. You're held by a power that's strong enough to protect you, and at the very same time, by a steadfast love that's deep enough to genuinely care about what you're going through. With Him, you are never unprotected and you are never uncared for.
Now, let's see how this all comes together in the most beautiful way. This entire idea points us straight to Jesus, who faced the greatest pressure you could ever imagine, and He did it with perfect trust.
I mean,
Think about it. Jesus was misunderstood, misrepresented, falsely accused, constantly. But he never, not once, resorted to self-protection or fighting back. Instead of defending himself, he consistently and completely entrusted everything, his reputation, his safety, his very life, into God's hands. And here's why that is such a game changer for us. At the cross, Christ took on the weight of all that judgment so that we could be free from the exhausting burden of having to protect ourselves all the time. Because of what he's done, you are already secure, you are already defended, you are already held. That truth sets us free to just rest, even when we have no idea how things are going to turn out.
So as we finish up, let's bring this right back home. Just take a moment and think, where in your life right now are you feeling that temptation to withdraw, to go silent, instead of actively choosing to trust? And let's be really honest with ourselves here. What is that false refuge, that foundation of sand that you're leaning on? Is it trying to control what happens next? Is it needing that one person's approval?
And that brings us to the final and maybe the most important question. Just for today, what would one small step of trusting God with that specific situation actually look like? It doesn't have to be some grand gesture. It might just be the quiet, internal choice to rest and to let Him carry the weight you were never, ever meant to hold.